Hello everyone, and welcome to Noodle Journey, your destination for detailed and informative reviews of the instant noodle universe. Today's my first review of an immensely popular product line from Nissin. This is a Hong Kong export product in their U.F.O line called stir-fry noodles with Japanese sauce. Before we begin, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy these reviews. So yeah, U.F.O is probably the most recognizable yakisoba brand in the world, certainly one of the most popular. So it's kind of wild that it's harder to find Nissin U.F.O in the USA than you might think. Fortunately, I have an Asian convenience store near me that imports all kinds of good stuff, and this version of U.F.O from Hong Kong happens to be one of them. And yes, the official English name for this product is Japanese sauce flavor, while the one sold in Japan is just yakisoba. This has some differences from what's sold in Japan, and the reason for that is in the ingredients, which I'll get to in a minute. But what I wanted to mention is one of the big questions that's plagued me for ages. Why do they call it U.F.O? Yes, in small text here it does say unidentified flying object, and I always assumed that that was in reference to the shape of these bowls. But I did some digging anyway. That's not actually what U.F.O originally stood for. According to Nissin's website, U.F.O stands for Umai Futoi Oki. Umai is the Japanese word for delicious, referring to the sauce. Futoi is the word for thick, referring to the noodles, and Oki is the word for large, referring to the size of the pieces of dried cabbage in these. So, delicious sauce, thick noodles, large cabbage. Now you know. So yes, I am still hoping to find the original Japanese version of this someday without paying a crazy shipping cost, but the reason I'm reviewing this Hong Kong version now instead of waiting for the Japanese one to show up somewhere is because if you live outside of Japan, this might be the one that's way easier for you to find. So let's look into the nutrition and ingredients, what makes the Hong Kong export slightly different, and we'll start with the sodium count. And it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, 1,641 milligrams. Not terrible for instant yakisoba. Let's open this up. Now inside you can see we've got a round block of noodles, some dried vegetables, and a couple of packets. The noodles are a pretty standard mixture of wheat flour, salt, and palm oil. In the seasoning powder, we've got sugar, MSG, salt, soy sauce, onion powder, garlic powder, and nondescript spices. In the seasoning oil, we've got palm oil, sweet soy sauce, and additional unspecified flavorings. Since I assume this is going to be kind of a standard yakisoba flavor, we should expect there to possibly be some things like ketchup, oyster sauce, or Worcestershire sauce flavors somewhere in these. I cannot find for sure if this contains shellfish or uses vegetarian substitutes for the flavorings, so it's best to assume that this is not vegetarian. The vegetables that are in here look to be dried cabbage and carrots. Now the thing that differentiates this Hong Kong version from the Japanese version is the reason I was able to find this one in the USA so much more easily. This does not have meat in it. The Japanese version does, specifically dried pork pieces and pork extract and oil in the sauce packets. So, of course, that all sounds great, but that also means that it is not as likely to be imported to the US due to restrictions on foreign meat. So with all that said, to cook this, you pull the lid back to this point, add some boiling water to the fill line inside. We're going to peel off this spout to drain it, and then stir in the powder and oil. So I'll go handle the boiling water and draining, and I'll be right back to mix this all up. All right, and here we go. Not exactly what I would call thick noodles or large cabbage, but we'll see. Seasoning powder goes in first. And it's got an unmistakable yakisoba aroma, like a zesty Worcestershire sauce in powder form. All right, seasoning oil next. And that also has kind of a similar aroma. All right, time to stir it up. All right, that looks pretty good. Between the powder and the oil, this smells exactly like yakisoba sauce that you would buy in a bottle. It's got that briny, acidic, ketchup Worcestershire kind of vibe to it. Smells good. Let's go for a taste. All right, so let's start with the noodle score first. For a product whose noodles are supposed to be fatoi, I don't think these are very fatoi at all. They're kind of on the thin side. They're a little soft. They're honestly not far off from cup noodles as far as their texture is concerned. They're not bad, but for something like yakisoba, I prefer something a little more firm. So I'm going to give these a 6 out of 10 for the noodle score. Now, as far as the spiciness score is concerned, there is something in here giving it a kick. There was no chili pepper listed in the ingredients, but I feel a very slight tingle that I can't quite chalk up to the more acidic ingredients. I am going to give this a 1 out of 10 for spice. I think there is definitely something in here, maybe black pepper, maybe a little bit of chili, but it's not completely mild. So be warned if you buy this and you don't like spicy food. And now overall flavor. There's not a lot of surprises in this. It's a very basic yakisoba sauce. Flavor-wise, it is a salty, zesty, slightly sweet mixture of flavors with some added texture from these nice chunks of carrot and these pieces of cabbage, which are not very large despite the promise of the branding. Anyway, these all rehydrated nice. They have a good flavor. There's a little bit of crunch from the carrot, which I liked. I should mention that there's more vegetables in here than there appear to be. They all kind of sifted down to the bottom. So I'm not going to complain about the amount of dehydrated vegetables in here. But yeah, all in all, it's pretty basic. No frills. Not quite as good as other yakisoba I have reviewed on this channel before. Sapporo Ichiban's yakisoba is better than this, in my opinion. Myojo's Ippei-chan yakisoba with the mustard mayonnaise pack, which is my favorite yakisoba of all time so far, is leagues better than this. This is just fine. The noodles are a little soft, fairly average. The sauce is tasty, but it is nothing special. So, I don't hate it, but there's better out there. So that means this is a 7 out of 10 as an overall score. If you have no other yakisoba varieties available in your area and you see this, give it a try. If you can find the Sapporo Ichiban or Myojo varieties that I mentioned, stick with them. You don't really need this. All right, so even though this is just a little bit north of average, I am glad I finally got to try Nissin U.F.O noodles. This is still reasonably tasty, and even though this isn't quite the same recipe as the flagship version from Japan, it's still okay on its own. If you've never had yakisoba before, this is honestly a pretty good place to start, considering that the U.F.O brand is pretty synonymous with instant yakisoba. Either way, leave me some comments if you've had this before and how you liked it, or tell me what your favorite instant yakisoba is. I do have a few more Nissin U.F.O varieties in the queue that I have managed to get my hands on recently, including what looks to be the only other bowl product Nissin makes for the Chinese market, which is a hot and spicy recipe with seafood. So be on the lookout for more U.F.O reviews in the future. If you want to see more U.F.O sooner rather than later, let me know in the comments and I will push those further up in the queue. Until then, I hope you'll join me here again on Noodle Journey.